Welcome to the Post-Gazette Live edition with Paul Zeise. I'm Paul Zeise. We will do this every day at 5 o'clock. And before we get started, we always, as always, want to say thank you to our sponsor, Archie's on Carson Street. Get down to Archie's, the official. Archie's is the home of 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday, home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich, also home of Archie, who's one heck of a guy. They have all the games all weekend long. They have all the games on Sundays. They have all the games on Saturdays. They have like tonight, for instance, they've got the Pitt basketball game if you want to watch some hoops. So get down to Archie's, and when you get down there, tell them Paul Zeise sent you. We are in a place right now where the Pirates yesterday break it up. The Pirates actually went out and made a move for a player to go and, I guess, address the first base. And here it is. It's Spencer Horwitz. He is from Toronto, and of course, it's one of those things where you look at. He's got a history with the Pirates, new hitting coach. He's got a history, I guess, as a guy who has some pedigree. They traded for him actually, but here's the bottom line on Spencer Horwitz. 112 career at bats. He's 27 years old. That doesn't give me a lot of what I would call confidence. OPS 790. I guess that's not horrific. Actually, 783. 790 was this year. He's got in 367 at bats, 13 home runs and 47 RBI. So a guy it looks like, at least based on early projections and early numbers and all that other stuff, it looks like he's a guy who might be a 20 home run guy. Clearly, that's not something that you're going to take to the bank. Clearly, it's not exactly what you are looking for if you're a Pirates fan, but by the same token, he's a classic guy that they go out and get all the time. A guy who, well, let's see. They have a lot of control over for the next few years, of course. A guy who's not very expensive, of course. A guy who basically somebody looked at the scouting of him and said, I think he is probably somebody who could maybe grow into something that's really good if he's coached differently, or whatever. So at the end of the day, I guess what we should all say is it's exactly what we thought it was going to be. I mean, really, if you think about it, Spencer Horwitz is not going to change, to me, significantly the Pirates lineup. I don't think he's going to really significantly alter the course of what they are, but he's still in pre-arbitration. And that's probably a little bit of a concerning thing too, because he's probably not going to get to arbitration until he's like 31, 32 years old. But nevertheless, he's going to make about $800,000 next year, and that's the reason that they signed him. Let's face it. That's the reason that the Pirates decided to go out and get him. He's now, they can say he's your first baseman. There's some discussion that they're going to use him along with Brian Reynolds at first. I mean, I just don't know, if that's going to be really. I mean, here's what you got to ask. And this is what I always ask. Okay? If you look at him, he's the kind of guy, to be honest, if you ask yourself this, will they contend with him? The answer is probably no. He's not, if you look around the teams that are going to make the playoffs, that are in contention with a playoff, you know what? They probably are doing better than Spencer Horwitz and Brian Reynolds as their platoon or whatever you want to call it at first base. So I would just say, basically, if you look at it from that standpoint, it's exactly the kind of move, unfortunately, we all kind of come to expect from the Pirates, where, it's not quite dumpster diving, but it's close. And you go get, a guy like Spencer Horwitz, and you basically say, hopefully you hit lightning in a bottle and he'll be much better than he was in Toronto. And all of a sudden our first base is taken care of. Now, here's the thing, they had to give up Luis Ortiz to make it happen. But I think the other thing that's important too is they have, they have talked now openly about trying to shop Mitch Keller around. And here's my thing. I don't necessarily think that that's the worst idea in the world if they're going to go out and get somebody. And it's going to be interesting because if you're going to trade somebody like Mitch Keller, who's probably your second, maybe third best pitcher. He's a guy who has proven over the course of time that he can be a competent pitcher and that he'll be pretty good. I think that that's really going to be interesting because I think that it's going to be a situation of where if you trade him, you better get somebody that can really help you win. I just don't know that that's what they did here, honestly. I don't know that they got somebody in Spencer Horwitz that can help them win. If they trade Mitch Keller, you obviously got Bubba Chandler, you got Thomas Harrington down in the minors, actually they'll be up in the majors now. You've got Oviedo returning, and don't forget you've got Bailey Falter returning. You also have Skeens and Jones, so you could actually part ways with Keller. Here's what I would tell you. I'd rather them part ways with one of the other guys that's more of an unknown, because I think you could get more. Like, you could get more probably from a Thomas Harrington than you will get from Mitch Keller. And I think Mitch Keller has proven he can help you win. But the Pirates basically have made it very clear in so many ways. They've made it very clear that they are just not going to go out and make the big moves that we want them to make. They're just not going to do it. And, to me, first base was a position that they needed to address, like really address, really go after, and really make sure that they are doing the best they could possibly do to get somebody that could actually help them win. That's the problem with the Pirates is it's never necessarily about winning. It's always about years of control and contract sizes. And again, I get it. They are somewhat limited because of quote unquote small market and all that stuff. I understand all that, but I'll be honest with you. I don't think that should give them a pass for always treating every single move and always treating every single day or whatever as if they have to dumpster dive for everything, because I just don't think they do. I really don't. I think that it's one of those situations, and it's important to note that. It's important to note that this is one of those situations where they had a chance to make it better. Period. And I think that's important. So I would like to see them actually go out and do something to make their team better. I don't know that they got better today with this addition of Spencer Horwitz. I just don't. I think that the reality of the situation is by getting better, it would mean that they would have to go out and really, really do the best they can do to find an outfielder now, to make their lineup complete. I mean, I look at what they have now, and this is, basically off the top of my head, Joey Bart and/or Endy Rodriguez is now your catching, combo. I think that's okay. I don't think that, it's great unless Endy Rodriguez, is the guy that we, thought he was going to be. But it's probably good enough. Don't know what you do with Henry Davis now. You don't even have first base as an option. I guess you can make him your DH, but what does that do with Andrew McCutchen? But Your first base, you have now Horwitz and I guess some Reynolds some in left field. I'm hearing that's the plan. Second base, you've got Nick Gonzalez. I think he can be good enough. He's got to get better than he was, but I thought that last year for his first full season, he showed enough where you feel like, okay, he can be a good second baseman for a long, long time for them. Not a star, but at least a guy that is a competent hitter who drives in runs, and a guy who basically is going to get a little bit better every time he takes the field. Shortstop, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, there is no evidence at all that he can be an everyday shortstop. None. Period. And then, of course, Brian Hayes, I just don't know what you have in him anymore. I mean, clearly he's got some injury issues. Clearly he's got a back issue. Clearly he's got some things going on that I just don't know how good he's going to be. Your outfield is a little bit of a mess right now. O'Neal Cruz, obviously, in center gives you a chance to have a really, really important guy. A big-time player. He's got to, continue to cut down his strikeouts. He's got to get better in the field. I get it. But you at least have an opportunity. He's got the talent. He could be one of the better players in the outfield. And then above and beyond that, you've got to find a right fielder, I would think. They thought they might have found him last year at the trade deadline. Clearly, it just didn't work out for them. De La Cruz just was never, ever the guy that they were hoping that he was going to be. He didn't even really hit home runs for them. And so he's gone. I think they DFA'd him or whatever they did with him, but he's probably gone, which means now you need to find a right fielder too. So the winter meetings are on, and it's been going on now for a few days. There's obviously been the Rule 5 draft. There's obviously been some trades. Some big names have moved from one team to another, like Juan Soto. But what you think is going on with the Pirates is probably what's going on, and that is this offseason, rather than look at their roster and say, we've got a pretty good pitching staff to build on, or at least the makings of a pretty good pitching staff to build on. We've got a few pieces in place that we can make better. I just don't know that they're going to make the moves that you need to make, right? That get them out of this mode where everything is always a dumpster dive and everything is always hoping. As Daniel Weisbecker says here, he's right. You go out and get all these utility guys, basically. You go out and get all these guys who are described as utility players. And you hope that one or two of them actually turn into, legitimate everyday players. It's not sustainable at all. It's not. So, Spencer Horwitz, to me, he solidifies first base, I suppose, but I don't know that he makes the Pirates better. And I think that he makes, he's another kind of guy. And if you're confused with what I'm saying, the last 2 years, this year they had Rowdy Tellez, who, for a period, he was the worst player in baseball. Then all of a sudden he became like a folk hero, and then they cut him basically, and they basically said, hey, we know you have 4 more at-bats, or actually it was 4 more plate appearance, if I'm not mistaken, to earn a bonus. But at the end of the day, we're going to cut you because we don't want to have to pay you. And the year before they had Carlos Santana, actually I thought was a pretty good player. My point is, I just don't know that Spencer Horwitz is he that much better than Rowdy Tellez was, or is he that much better than Carlos Santana was? I just don't know. I just think that it's not a good, sustainable way to go about your business ever, period. But this is the way they do things, and this is why there's a lot of frustration with that team. It really is. By the way, the game is always on. The game is always on at Archie's. Get down to Archie's on Carson Street. Home of the 80-cent wings Monday through Thursday. Home of the Paul Zeise grilled cheese sandwich. Tell Archie I sent you. Sunday, they have all the games on all day long, all the way to the end of at the end of the last game on Sunday night. So get down there for eat, drink, lots of sporting events to watch. He's got all the channels. He's got a Fire Stick. He's got a million different ways. So pretty much any game that's on anywhere that you want to watch, he can find a way to put it on for you. On to the Steelers. Now, let me talk about the Steelers. But before I talk about the Steelers, okay, because there's a number of things to talk about with the Steelers. Let me say this about Hard Knocks. Okay, last night was the second Hard Knocks edition. And they're doing the AFC North, where they're doing the behind the scenes with the Hard Knocks behind the scenes with the AFC North. So of course they are going behind the scenes with the Steelers, the Ravens, the Bengals, and the Browns. When Hard Knocks began, and I would say the first 5 to 7 years, maybe more like the first 4 to 6 years, I thought Hard Knocks was the best thing, or one of the most well-done things on TV. And mostly because it was legitimately behind the scenes. It was legitimately taking you inside the places that you really haven't ever really been able to go into. It was giving you privy to certain conversations that you probably weren't privy to, before Hard Knocks came along. I thought it was a great production. I thought, as they did the series, they got a lot of access. There was a lot of things that you were able to learn by watching Hard Knocks. I think the show sucks now. I'll be quite frankly with you. I think it sucks. I don't know that there's one single thing that I've learned about Mike Tomlin, about the Steelers, or anything else. There's not one single thing that I've learned that I didn't already know. Some of the little dialogue, like last night, Mike Tomlin talking to Joey Porter Jr. about contacts or something and getting LASIK surgery or whatever. I mean, that kind of stuff just kind of humanizes it. I get it, but that doesn't do me any good. We used to be able to actually go into meetings. You used to be able to go and sit in on, the general manager talking to other general managers about certain trades, about certain acquisitions. You got, behind the scenes with like the general manager and the head coach talking about things, and talking about player personnel and all that stuff. All that stuff, to me, used to be a part of it. Now, the dialogue is just kind of, it's just really kind of scratch the surface kind of stuff. It's so heavily edited now. The teams have the right of the, first refusal, basically. The teams are able to basically decide, how it's going to be edited and what's actually going to make it to the actual show. So, while Hard Knocks it's kind of neat that the Steelers are a part of it. I'll be honest with you. I just think the show is not nearly as good as it used to be. And I just don't know that it's insightful either. It's just going to be one of these things where, it's all just stuff that we already kind of knew. There's a few mic'd up periods on the sideline where you might hear a coach like, Mike Tomlin saying whatever he was saying to Herbig. Was it last week's episode? Listen, there is nothing that we have seen from Hard Knocks, and this is what makes me sad about it. Hard Knocks used to be a show where you watched it and there was a lot. There was a lot that you could learn about these teams. And I would watch Hard Knocks, and then that would make me want to follow a team throughout the season because it was kind of like, wow, let's just see this thing. But I just don't know that it is really, all that good anymore. Thunder God here says that nobody else knew all this stuff about Tomlin. Really? You didn't know that Tomlin was good with his players? You didn't know that Tomlin was good talking to his players? You didn't know that Tomlin's strength was that he related to his players? You didn't know that? Did you just climb out of from underneath a rock? And this has nothing to do with Mike Tomlin, by the way, or the Steelers, or the AFC North. It has everything to do with the fact that Hard Knocks used to be a great show, and it isn't anymore. It isn't. There's nothing that you've learned about the Steelers or about Mike Tomlin that you didn't already know. If you're a fan or somebody that follows the team or whatever, there's nothing that's new about it. And, I just feel like it's it used to be, for instance, look, you used to be able to go into the coach's office when they were cutting a player, or when they were asking a player to basically go to the bench, or, when a player was asking to be traded. These are things that you used to be able to have real legitimate behind the scenes kind of stuff. You don't have it anymore. And so it's kind of disappointing for somebody like me, because I used to love Hard Knocks. I used to think it was by far the best thing on television. Every single week I used to get really hyped for it when, during training camp, when it was running, and it didn't matter what the team was. That was the other thing. It's just basically, whatever. There's some, discussion with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins about, Joe Burrow bought a Batmobile or something. Okay. Again, it kind of humanizes something. The one thing I will say I did kind of thought was neat was that they were able to go to Cam Hayward's house, where him and Connor Hayward were having Thanksgiving dinner with, some friends and family or whatever. I thought that was okay. That was kind of a behind-the-scenes thing that I thought was pretty cool. Jameis Winston at his house with his kids and his wife and everything else. Again, those scenes used to be a lot more prevalent than they are. But to me, you can watch Inside the NFL and see all the game footage. And actually the mic'd up stuff, for the most part, you can see all that stuff too. So there's that. I find it amazing that when you look at the Steelers and where they've gotten to this year, their approach in so many ways has been the opposite of what the Pirates do. Forget about the winning. Forget about the salary cap too, because that's, not what really I'm getting at. But the Steelers and the Penguins, for that matter, I haven't agreed with the Penguins' approach the last 2 years, but the Steelers and the Penguins legitimately, they basically both try to win every single year. And if you're a fan of those two teams, you got to know they're not always going to win, because you just can't win every year. Sometimes you get injuries. Sometimes things happen. Sometimes, you draft the wrong quarterback in the first round. There's a lot of things that happen. There's a lot of things that happen that make it so you can't win every year. But this year especially really highlights, in my mind, the Steelers and their approach and how different it is from the Pirates' approach. And this is just not me trying to rip on the Pirates, but again, the Pirates made news today because they got their first baseman or whatever. The Steelers basically identified the fact that they needed a quarterback and they needed to get their offensive line better. And they needed a couple of spots on defense filled. Now, they could have taken the approach where, well, let's see if we can trade up and maybe draft another quarterback and maybe see how that works and, whatever, but they didn't. And not only did they go get Russell Wilson, who they said basically we've got him on a 1-year deal, they went and got Justin Fields as an insurance policy on a 1-year deal. And then at the trade deadline, they went and got, some help at the edge rusher, and then they went and got Mike Williams too. And it's because even though these guys aren't long-term guys, they looked at it and basically said, these guys can help us win this year. These guys are guys that can give us an opportunity to win this year. We'll worry about next year. We'll worry about long-term contracts. We'll worry about 2027 when 2027 comes. Right now, we are going to basically try and win this year. If you're a Steeler fan, listen, they haven't won every year. They've lost playoff games. I get it. There's frustration with Mike Tomlin at times. I get all that. But the one thing you cannot say about the Steelers is that they don't play to at least try and win every single year. They make moves in the offseason to try and get better, to try and win this year. And that, to me, is the opposite of the Pirates, who are always worried about years of control. They're always worried about their minor league prospects. They're always worried. They're not worried, it seems like, about, okay, in 2025, who gives us the best chance to win? And we'll worry about 2028 when 2028 comes here. This is what I like about the Steelers. And I think that's the key. And R.J. Smith here, he's talking about how, well, it's a different collective bargaining agreement is basically what he was trying to make a case of the salary cap. It has nothing to do with it. It has nothing to do with it. You can have a different approach than the Pirates have to try and win every single year or try and bring guys in every single year and not hoard every single prospect that you've ever had because, you know, in the hope that in 2029, they're all going to come together and be great at the same time. That's their approach as always. And it's the wrong approach to me. You know, you've got Paul Skeens for the next 3 years or 4 years or whatever it's going to be before you have to trade him away because you can't afford him. So let's say it's the next 3 seasons. It's this season. Yeah, because I think it's this season and the next. So 2025. So 2027, 2028, you got a window of about 3 or 4 years max to have the best pitcher in baseball on your roster. So yes, you need to basically say, you know what? This guy that, you know, these 2 guys that we have in single A baseball right now who are, you know, great prospects in our mind that might become good players, if they can bring guys back that can actually help us win now, we're going to make those deals. You can do that. You don't have to hoard every single prospect. You don't have to try and, you know, pinch pennies every single time. I get it. The salary cap makes it different than, you know, without a salary cap, but it's not. It's the mentality that you have. The Steelers very easily could have said, well, you know, we drafted Kenny Pickett, and so we're going to give him the full 4 or 5 years to see if he can figure it out. You know, and he's going to grow. And, you know, we've got we drafted, you know, Broderick Jones, so we're not going to draft another guy in the first round because we'll let Broderick Jones figure it out. You know, I mean, there's a lot of things. You know what? We can save a little bit of money and just not go out and get a guy like Patrick Queen because we feel like we've got decent enough. And that's not what they did. It's not what they do. It's a mentality. It's a mentality that goes on with the. So, you know, when you look at the Steelers, to me, their approach is this year. Their approach was, listen, we're going to try and win this year. You know, we're going to bring in Russell Wilson. Hope he still has something left in the tank, which he clearly does. We're going to bring him in. We're going to bring in Justin Fields as a insurance policy, and we're going to do the best we can possibly do to put a roster on the field that we think will at least give us a chance to win. That's what I like about the Steelers. And again, I don't agree with the Penguins, you know, what they've done, you know, the last 2 or 3 years. I think they've really stunted some things by just trying to, you know, catch lightning in a bottle with their 3 stars. But the point is they're playing to win. If you're playing to win, I'm okay with whatever you're going to do. Honestly, if you're playing to win. And so, you know, now you look at the Steelers going forward. They've got some decisions to make, obviously. One of the things that I do think, you know, and I know what the show notes said about George Pickens. Here's my thing. I think George Pickens is their best player on offense. T.J. Watt's their best player. I would say probably Cam Hayward might be their second best player, but Pickens is maybe their third best player. And so, you know, you got a guy like that. First of all, if you are without him for a couple of games and you're able to scrape by and win, I don't know that necessarily says anything other than the guys you still have here, you know, were good enough or were tough enough or whatever to scrape out, you know, to scrape by a win and win. But to me, I've been on this train for a long time, and I'm going to be on it for a long, long time. The Steelers should do everything in their power to re-sign George Pickens and keep him around. I know that some people don't like him. Some people think he's immature, all that stuff. I really get it. I understand it. But to me, I'll be honest with you, I think that he's a guy that's growing up a little bit. He's getting better. He's getting tougher. He's, you know, and I think he's a star. You don't trade away stars. You don't trade away guys who are, really among the where would you put them? Top 5, probably top 7 or 8 receivers with the potential to be top, maybe 2 or 3 by the time he's done in the NFL. I'm not saying of all time. I'm saying right now. If Chase obviously to me is the best receiver right now. You've got Justin Jefferson. There's 3 or 4 guys like that. Then there's Pickens is right there, not that far behind those guys. And so to me, he's a star. You don't trade a star away. You don't get rid of a star. If they beat the Eagles and Ravens without George Pickens, it probably is going to mean that they've found a way to grind things out. And, but that's not – you don't want to go back to playing that way. That's how they played the last 2 years or 3 years. You want them to win, with an offense that can score when they need to score. You want them to win when an offense, is almost always one play away from scoring. And that's in large part because of the quarterback, but also because you've got a guy like Pickens. So to me, it makes no sense to trade George Pickens. Tomorrow we'll have a guest. We will have a good time again tomorrow, getting you ready for the weekend. We'll get you ready for some of the things that is going to go on over the weekend. Obviously, we will talk more about the state championship game between the Eagles and the Steelers.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.